This is channel Xianxia Audio. Please support me a subscription. This is the series I'm Not a Theater God. Chapter 191, Interrogation. Haha, Lu Chen let out a dry laugh. Xianxia, I don't know how you escaped from prison, but if you don't want to experience the pain of soul fragmentation, search evidence again. You'd better let me go now. I've been missing for so long. The Constellation Commerce Association must have already noticed something is wrong. A large number of people are already on their way. Once they arrive, you won't be able to escape even if you had wings. Xianxia looked at Lu Chen coldly. He hadn't expected the other party to be such a tough nut to crack. From the looks of it, it wouldn't be easy to extract useful information from his mouth. At the same time, Chen Ling also slightly opened his eyes. He glanced at Lu Chen, who was pressed against the tree trunk by Xianxia. An invisible heart serpent outlined itself from his brow and quickly approached Lu Chen. Don't worry. Xianxia pulled out a short sword and spoke unhurriedly. They won't catch me. We have enough time. As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp short sword directly pierced into Lu Chen's body and was twisted forcefully under Xianxia's control. Ah! Excruciating pain tore at Lu Chen's nerves, and he screamed in agony. At the same time, Xianxia's demonic growl echoed in his ears. Speak, how many people did you send to capture me this time? Where are they ambushed? Did you use those outsiders? Xianxia threw out several questions in a row, but Lu Chen showed no intention of answering. He endured the intense pain in his body, looking as if he would rather die than give in. Chen Ling knew this guy was a hard bone to chew. It would be difficult to pry any useful information from him using conventional methods. So, with a flick of his finger, the heart serpent entwined around Lu Chen immediately began to bite. Suddenly, Lu Chen felt his heart calm down. The fear that had arisen from Xianxia's threats and torture vanished at this moment. He could clearly feel the pain in his body, but he showed no sign of softening, remaining inexplicably calm. Speak, Xianxia roared again. You want to get information from me? No way. Lu Chen gritted his teeth and replied. Xianxia was also enraged. He slapped the other party's face several times in a row, almost breaking all of Lu Chen's teeth. The muscles in his cheeks visibly swelled, making him look like a pig's head. Lu Chen remained fearless, raising his head and shouting, If you have the guts, kill me. Do you really think I wouldn't dare to kill you? Xianxia threw the short sword aside and punched Lu Chen with a backhand. Even though he had held back most of his strength, most of Lu Chen's ribs were still broken, and he fell to the ground from midair like garbage. Lu Chen's wails echoed through the dense forest. Xianxia showed no intention of letting him go. He flickered his body, directly straddling him, and punched Lu Chen's face like raindrops. Are you going to speak? No. Are you going to speak? No. Quote. Xianxia gritted his teeth, his fists landing harder each time. He secretly thought it was strange, when he was in the Yan family before. He didn't feel that this Lu Chen was so unyielding. After more than a dozen punches, Lu Chen was covered in blood. Xianxia was about to continue interrogating him when a voice suddenly sounded from the side. Enough. Xianxia's fist stopped in midair. He looked back and saw Chen Ling slowly standing up, dusting off his coat. If you keep hitting him, he'll die. Not hitting him? How else will he confess? Xianxia frowned. Such crude methods of interrogation are quite rare. Xianxia's face was a bit unsightly. He looked at the dying Lu Chen beneath him, snorted coldly, and stood up. Then you do it. I'd like to see what advanced methods you have. Chen Ling didn't refuse. He walked directly to the blood-soaked Lu Chen and stood still. At this moment, Lu Chen had been beaten into a semi-conscious state. Through the only eye he could still open, he saw a strange young man coming to interrogate him. He spoke in a hoarse and weak voice. If you have the guts, kill me. I'm not like that fool. I won't kill you, and I won't hit you, Chen Ling said slowly. However, from now on, you'd best answer whatever I ask. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what will happen. Seeing this, Xianxia's brows furrowed even tighter. He couldn't be serious about using such ridiculous threats for interrogation. Could he? He wasn't sure what Chen Ling was up to, but the other party really didn't seem to have any intention of acting. Even keeping his hands in his pockets, as if he wasn't interrogating a prisoner but strolling in his own garden. First question. Chen Ling spoke calmly. Who instructed you to dispose of the body? Lu Chen was about to force a cold laugh. But the heart serpent entwined around him opened its large mouth. And all the fear that had been stolen from him flooded back into his mind. It was the fear that Xianxia had beaten out of him earlier. Now all gathered together, superimposed on each other, like a surging tide crashing into Lu Chen's mind. Lu Chen's pupils instantly constricted. At this moment, Chen Ling in his eyes seemed to transform into a tyrannical and merciless tremor demon, stirring up the most primitive and extreme fear in his heart, making him tremble uncontrollably in the pool of blood. Lu Chen didn't know where he found the strength, but he struggled to climb out of the pool of blood, then plopped down on his knees in front of Chen Ling, kowtowing and answering. It was the young master. He made me do it. Xianxia was dumbfounded. From his perspective, Chen Ling just asked a casual question, and Lu Chen started kowtowing frantically as if he had encountered something extremely terrifying. When he was interrogating him, Lu Chen was as stubborn as a rock. But as soon as he saw Chen Ling, he became so cowardly. What method did this guy use? Who is the young master? Chen Ling asked again. Yan Qishou. Were you also involved in the organ trade in the 7 districts before? This, maybe? I'm not sure. Lu Chen hesitated. Seeing this, Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. He slowly walked forward, grabbed Lu Chen's collar, and his voice was bone-chillingly cold. You'd better think carefully. I really don't know. I was just ordered to come and dispose of that body. I'm just a runner, cleaning up messes. I really don't know anything else. Then, how many hearts has the Constellation Commerce Association handled recently? Roughly, 3 or 4? Who bought them all? These items aren't for sale. Most of the time, it's based on favors, and some other exchanges of interests. This time, it seems the vice president of the Silver Moon Merchant Guild asked the young master because his child was sick. I don't know where the other few went. Chapter 192, Surprise. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. In this situation, Lu Chen was unlikely to be lying. This guy was probably just a small fry under Yan Qishou. It would be difficult to get anything more in-depth from him. Although his confession wasn't extensive, it pointed out a few key things to Chen Ling. One was the young master of the Constellation Commerce Association, Yan Qishou, and the other was the exchange of favors for benefits. It seemed that the trade of these organs was not a market transaction, as Chen Ling had once thought, but rather an item circulating among high-status individuals in Aurora City. As the heart serpent exhaled, the fear that had accumulated was gradually receding, and Lu Chen's trembling body slowly calmed down. He knelt on the ground, looking at Chen Ling, his eyes filled with deep bewilderment. He didn't know why he had felt such intense fear towards Chen Ling just now. The other party hadn't even done anything, yet he had been scared into kneeling and kowtowing. To him, everything that had just happened felt like a dream. Chen Ling knew that he wouldn't get anything more by asking, so he simply ended the interrogation, put his hands in his pockets, and walked away. Behind him, Xianxia was looking at him with a shocked and puzzled expression. How did you do that? Xianxia finally couldn't help but ask. Chen Ling didn't answer, but as he passed him, he patted his shoulder. You still have a lot to learn, young man. Xianxia. Wait, several thoughts flashed through Xianxia's mind. He called out to Chen Ling. Are you investigating the organ trade? Do you also have a grudge against the Constellation Commerce Association? Judging by the current situation, it seems so. Chen Ling nodded slightly. No matter who took his heart, Yan Qishou was now confirmed to be involved in the organ trade. It was quite possible that his own heart had entered the market through him. If that were the case, then the Constellation Commerce Association was certainly implicated. Perhaps we can join forces, Xianxia immediately said. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. We've come to know each other through this fight today. Since we both have to deal with the Constellation Commerce Association, perhaps we can cooperate. Chen Ling raised an eyebrow. You have a plan? No. Xianxia paused, then said again, but there will be an opportunity sooner or later. Won't there? The Constellation Commerce Association is powerful, it's difficult to oppose them alone. Having one more trustworthy teammate can't hurt. Seeing this, Chen Ling slowly turned around. Before we trust each other, shouldn't we at least know each other's names? Xianxia was stunned. He hesitated for a long time. My name is Jian Wu Bing. Haha. Chen Ling said expressionlessly. My name is Lin Yan. Good. Jian Chongsheng nodded. Where do you live? If I have a plan. Where should I find you? I don't have a place to live. Why don't you tell me your address? And I'll come find you? Chen Ling naturally couldn't tell him where he lived. After all, to him, Jian Chongsheng was still a dangerous person. And there was no trust to speak of. I don't have a place to live either. The two looked at each other. And the air suddenly fell silent. How about this? Jian Chongsheng thought of a method. Do you know the Century Tower? It's the tallest building in the city. If either of us needs to find the other, we can go to the top of the tower and fly a red kite. How about that? Good suggestion. Chen Ling glanced at the sky. He didn't have time to continue entangling with Jian Chongsheng. After waving his hand, he walked into the distance. Then I'll see you then. As Chen Ling's figure gradually disappeared at the end of the dense forest, Jian Chongsheng's expression became solemn. He looked back at Lu Chen, who was sitting in a pool of blood, and slowly walked forward. With his hands in his pockets, he mimicked Chen Ling's earlier demeanor and coldly said, "From now on, you'd better answer whatever I ask. Understand?" Lu Chen weakly rolled his eyes. Get lost. Ellipsis. Chen Ling ultimately didn't make a move on Jian Chongsheng. It wasn't because Chen Ling was soft-hearted, but because the other party's dripping blood top skill was too abnormal. He calculated that even if he made a move, the possibility of keeping the other party was no more than 50%. Moreover, Jian Chongsheng was indeed on the opposite side of the Constellation Commerce Association. Although Chen Ling didn't expect him to cooperate sincerely, he could at least help divert some of the Constellation Commerce Association's attention. Chen Ling carried the corpse wrapped in a white sheet, hurrying through the dim streets. At the edge of the horizon, a sliver of dawn was faintly visible. Unbeknownst to him, he had been busy all night long. He gained a lot this night. Lu Chen's testimony could only be for his own ears and couldn't serve as effective evidence. What could be considered evidence and clues was the corpse in his hands. But how should he deal with this corpse? Although he had obtained the corpse, he wasn't a forensic doctor, so he didn't have much clue on how to investigate it. Handing it over to the enforcer was also impossible, as those people were all in cahoots. The only way seemed to be. Chen Ling frowned and thought for a long time. Then his eyes lit up slightly. He suddenly changed direction and approached another part of Aurora City. Ellipsis. The next day, Chen Ling rubbed his sleepy eyes and slowly walked out of the room. Where were you last night? Chu Muyan was still sitting in the courtyard. Seeing him finally appear, he closed his book and asked. I went to investigate some things. I had some gains. Chen Ling poured himself a pot of hot tea and glanced at the time. Did Wen Shilin come last night? No. By my reckoning, it should be about time. Time for what? Just as Chu Muyan asked with a puzzled expression, an urgent knock on the door sounded from the courtyard entrance. Chen Ling unhurriedly put down the teapot and walked towards the main entrance. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Wen Shilin standing outside, his expression a bit strange. Mr. Wen, good morning, Chen Ling yawned. Morning. Wen Shilin seemed to remember something. He took out a press card from his arms and handed it to Chen Ling. Oh, right, I've processed your identification. From today on, you are an official reporter for the Aurora Daily, with freedom of the press. Chen Ling took the press card. It indeed had his photo and name, and it looked very well made. This thing wasn't easy to get, and it was clear that Wen Shilin had put a lot of effort into it these past 2 days. Thank you, Mr. Wen, Chen Ling said sincerely. Don't thank me for this yet. I have something more urgent. What's wrong? Wen Shilin first looked around to confirm no one was present, then leaned into Chen Ling's ear and whispered. Early this morning, I heard someone knocking on the door. To be safe, I waited inside for about 20 minutes before opening the door. Guess what I found at the door? What did you find? Chen Ling cooperatively asked. A corpse. Wen Shilin's eyes gleamed, filled with excitement and curiosity. Someone left a corpse with its internal organs removed at my door. Chapter 193. Reporter Lin Yan. Wow. Chen Ling cooperatively expressed his shock. Who is it? Who would do such a thing? Wen Shilin pondered seriously for a moment, then replied, most likely the victim's family? I've encountered this situation before. after their child was murdered. Parents, fearing the perpetrator's authority, only dared to use this method to ask for my help, hoping I could give them justice. It's also possible someone discovered the body but didn't want to get involved. I see, Chen Ling nodded. Chen Ling had initially thought about finding some excuse to muddle through and distance himself from the body. But it seemed he had overthought it. I took a quick look. And the condition of that body is very similar to what you described earlier. It's highly likely also related to organ trafficking, Wen Xiaolin said gravely. Chen Ling's expression immediately turned serious. Are you saying those people made their move in Aurora City? Most likely, yes. There are too many suspicious points on that body. A systematic examination is needed first. I'll go find a friend, he's an expert in forensic medicine. Wen Xiaolin checked the time and continued. You go to the newspaper office with your ID first to pick up your things. I'll come find you after I'm done here. Wen Xiaolin's expression was very hurried. After a few words with Chen Ling, he turned and left. Chen Ling watched Wen Xiaolin's retreating back and secretly thought, how professional. If it were any other reporter, waking up in the morning to find an empty body at their doorstep would probably scare them half to death. And then they'd start wondering if they had offended someone. In contrast, Wen Xiaolin's reaction upon seeing the body wasn't fear, but rather like a hunter scenting prey, immediately springing into action with astonishing efficiency. Chen Ling closed the main door, went back to tidy up his things, and only unhurriedly set off when it was almost time for the newspaper office to open. This was his first day officially on the job, although he only wanted to use the identity of a reporter to cause trouble. He still had to maintain appearances. He chose an elegant and steady shirt and vest from Chu Muyun's wardrobe, tied his tie, put on a brown overcoat, and with his half-rimmed glasses, he indeed looked the part from a distance. Chu Muyun, also preparing for work, walked out of the house wearing a white coat. Seeing Chen Ling's attire in the courtyard, his eyebrows slightly raised. Nice outfit, Reporter Lin. Chu Muyun's tone was a bit subtle. I hope that in the Aurora Daily over the next few days, fewer big news stories related to you will be published. Chen Ling pushed up the frames of his glasses and smiled. Don't worry, I'm always very well behaved. With that, he pushed open the door and left. Under Chu Muyun's eye roll, Chen Ling walked to the roadside, casually hailed a rickshaw, and headed straight for the newspaper office. The Aurora newspaper office was not far from Chen Ling's residence, but rather than good luck, it was more that Chu Muyun's mansion was in an excellent location, situated in the most central and bustling area of Aurora City, making no destination too remote. However, to Chen Ling's surprise, the newspaper office was not as large as he had imagined. A 4-story Western-style building located on the street was the entire premises of the newspaper office. The dark brown brick surface was covered with marks of wind and snow. And above the narrow entrance, the worn and faded characters, Aurora Newspaper Office, were written, exuding a strong sense of history. Chen Ling stood alone at the entrance for a while before pushing the door open and walking in. Who are you? As soon as he entered, the security guard at the newspaper office entrance cautiously scrutinized Chen Ling, silently gripping the baton behind his back. My name is Lin Yan, and I'm the new reporter. Chen Ling pulled out his press pass. Today is my first day of work. The security guard suspiciously examined the press pass for a long time before finally relaxing slightly. Wait a moment. With that, he turned and walked to the end of the corridor. After a few words with someone, a figure quickly emerged from inside. It was a woman in a beige professional suit and high heels. With neat short hair, looking very elegant, she carefully observed Chen Ling for a moment. You are Lin Yan? Yes. Sorry, because people often come to the newspaper office to cause trouble. The security measures are a bit stricter. I am Feng Man, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper office, she said, walking towards the interior of the newspaper office. Wen Xiaolin has already told me about your situation. Come with me, I'll show you around. Seeing this, Chen Ling immediately followed closely behind her, while curiously looking around. Although Feng Man was wearing high heels, her walking speed was not slow at all. She moved among the many workstations and slowly began. The history of the Aurora newspaper office can be traced back to over 300 years ago when Aurora City was established. We were born with the responsibility of supervising and guarding the truth, enduring hundreds of years of wind and snow to reach today. Even now, we are still the most authoritative media in Aurora City. As soon as Feng Man spoke, Chen Ling felt a familiar sensation, like listening to his boss in his previous life promoting corporate culture. After hearing this, Chen Ling felt a bit awkward. He pushed up his glasses and asked casually, "Born with the duty of supervising and guarding the truth, what are we born for now?" Feng Man's steps paused slightly. She gave Chen Ling a deep look, without revealing what she was thinking, and simply replied blandly, "I know what you want to say. Since when Xiaolin was willing to bet his career to recommend you, it means you two must have something in common. I can only tell you that our duty has never changed over the years. What changes are people." Upon hearing this, Chen Ling felt a bit surprised. On one hand, it seemed not everyone in the newspaper office was corrupted. On the other hand, Wen Xiaolin had actually risked his career to get him the reporter position. No wonder the procedures were so fast. Chen Ling understood Feng Man's hidden meaning and nodded slightly. "I understand. The first floor is the reception area, and also the editorial department. This area here is the studio." Feng Man didn't take the previous interlude to heart and continued to introduce the newspaper office to Chen Ling. The other people in the newspaper office also noticed the new face and cast curious glances at him. And among the busy crowd, Chen Ling casually glanced and even saw a familiar face. Not far away, behind an office desk, Zhou Shuqing, whose mouth was still covered with an ice pack, seemed to have finished his work. He unhurriedly put down his pen, yawned lazily, revealing the few broken teeth left in his mouth. But halfway through the yawn, his gaze caught Chen Ling walking towards him. His wide-open mouth instantly froze. His eyes widened, looking as if he had seen a ghost. Why are you here?" Chapter 194, Xiao Zhou. "I have a question for you." Zhou Shuqing felt like he might not have woken up yet. Ever since Chen Ling shattered half his teeth with a single punch in the outer ring, that calm and indifferent face had become his nightmare. Not only did the toothache keep him from sleeping, but virtually every time he fell asleep, he would dream of the day Chen Ling delivered his fist of justice. Under the repeated influence of these nightmares, the filter of fear over Chen Ling's face in his subconscious grew heavier and heavier. Now, it was almost synonymous with demon. Last night, he finally got a slightly better sleep, but as soon as he walked into the office and sat down today, he saw the face from his nightmares suddenly follow him to his workstation. The level of fright was no less than seeing a ghost in broad daylight. "You two know each other?" Feng Man looked at Chen Ling in surprise. "We met once, not close." Chen Ling shrugged. "Where's my workstation?" "That's your workstation. When you're not out on assignments, you'll be writing articles here." After speaking, she paused, then added, "However, since you're following Wen Xiaolin, you probably won't have much time to sit still. We'll see how it goes." The spot Feng Man pointed to was the empty desk right next to Zhou Shuqing's. Chen Ling glanced at Zhou Shuqing, a playful smile curling at the corner of his lips. "Okay, I understand. I've left all your things on the desk. The camera is with Wen Xiaolin, you can ask him for it directly. If you have any other questions, just ask Zhou Shuqing. You two already know each other anyway." Feng Man lowered her head to check the time. "I have a meeting soon, so I'll be leaving first." Feng Man seemed to be a typical strong woman, always busy. As soon as she finished showing Chen Ling around, she immediately plunged into other work without any hesitation. As Feng Man left, Zhou Shuqing still hadn't recovered. He stared blankly at Chen Ling, who was walking towards him, as if in a dream. Chen Ling slowly walked up to Zhou Shuqing, revealing a harmless smile. "Please take care of me from now on." "Zhou, what was it again?" "This is impossible." Zhou Shuqing jolted awake, speaking in disbelief. "You became a reporter? What do you think?" Chen Ling sat down at the workstation next to him and began to look through the items on the desk, which mainly consisted of some regulations manuals, notebooks, pens, and so on. Chen Ling picked up a pen, about to shake out the ink. As soon as he waved his hand, Zhou Shuqing, startled, instinctively covered his face. Chen Ling found this somewhat amusing. "What are you afraid of? There are so many people here. Do you think I'd hit you?" Zhou Shuqing's face instantly turned extremely ugly. He thought, "When you hit me last time, there were even more people around than this." He didn't dare to glare at Chen Ling, only snorted coldly and turned his head away. Chen Ling tested the pen and confirmed the ink was fine. His gaze then swept around. A dozen or so office desks were arranged crisscross in this office area on this floor. 2/3 of them were empty. Most of the people working on this floor were reporters. And at this time, many of them should be out on assignments. Xiao Zhou, I have a question for you, Chen Ling said very naturally. Zhou Shuqing didn't want to bother with Chen Ling. He was about to get up to pour himself a glass of water when a strong hand pressed down on his shoulder, pressing him back into his seat like Mount Tai. Immediately after, those 5 fingers, like iron tongs, gripped his bones tightly, a jolt of pain instantly transmitting to Zhou Shuqing's mind. At the same time, a cold voice sounded in his ear. I need to ask you something. Do you have time? Zhou Shuqing's face turned pale. He immediately nodded. Yes, yes. Do you know a Cheng? Which one here is his workstation? Zhou Shuqing swallowed, stammering. A Cheng, the one you're sitting at. That was his original spot. A flicker of surprise crossed Chen Ling's eyes, and his hand released Zhou Shuqing's shoulder. Although it only lasted a few seconds, Zhou Shuqing felt as if his shoulder was about to fall apart. He abruptly stood up from his seat, put on his reporter's badge, and rushed out as if fleeing for his life. The reason he was so leisurely at the newspaper office at this time was because he was lazy. And furthermore, there were people outside who would pay him, so he naturally didn't want to go out on assignments and suffer. But now that Chen Ling was sitting next to him, Zhou Shuqing would rather go out every day and work like a dog than be lazy here. Chen Ling didn't stop him. Instead, after he left, Chen Ling's fingertips began to fumble through the drawers of the desk. According to a Cheng, he had copied the article about Hand of Salvation and hidden it in the interlayer of his desk. Chen Ling had originally thought he would need to search for it after infiltrating the Aurora newspaper office. But he didn't expect it to come so easily. Soon, his fingertips touched a barely perceptible bulge. As Chen Ling's fingertips applied a little force, several thin pages were pulled out from a gap in the wood on the upper inner side of the drawer. Chen Ling quickly scanned them, seeing the words, Hand of Salvation, flash across them. With many eyes around, Chen Ling naturally couldn't unfold these documents here. Instead, he flicked his finger, collecting the pages as if by magic, as if they had never existed. Chen Ling sat in the office for a while longer. After about 10 minutes, Wen Xiaolan returned to the newspaper office and walked over to Chen Ling's workstation. He seemed a little surprised to see that Zhou Shuqing at the next desk wasn't there. But then he looked at Chen Ling, who was bored and spinning a pen, and seemed to understand something. How do you feel? Not bad, Chen Ling replied. The atmosphere isn't as bad as I imagined, and my colleague is unexpectedly interesting. Have you met Feng Man? I have. She's my superior, a very good person. If you have any trouble at the newspaper office in the future, you can ask her for help. Chen Ling nodded slightly. What about the body? Wen Xiaolan's expression was somewhat serious. He looked around and said to Chen Ling, Follow me. Chen Ling followed Wen Xiaolan out of the newspaper office, walking down the street. As more pedestrians appeared and the surroundings became noisy, Wen Xiaolan lowered his voice and said, That body came from Frostleaf Hospital. Chen Ling was stunned. He looked at Wen Xiaolan in confusion. How did you find that out? In his opinion, Wen Xiaolan could only find out the body's age, cause of death, or other physiological details, as those were the only clues left on the body. He didn't understand how Wen Xiaolan could accurately pinpoint the victim's hospital through a single body. The condition of the body was pretty much as I expected. Someone professionally removed the organs. And my friend found medical anesthetic residue in his body. There's nothing more to say about that. Wen Xiaolan paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. The key is the sheet wrapped around him. Chapter 195, Strangers. Bed sheets? Chen Ling had also checked the bed sheets last night, but found nothing. There was no hospital name left on them, since those people dared to wrap the body in bed sheets for cremation. There shouldn't be any clues on them. There are 4 hospitals in Aurora City, 2 public and 2 private. Due to different suppliers, there are subtle differences in the stitching of these bed sheets. Wen Xiaolan took out 4 pieces of fabric from his arms and laid them out on the ground. This morning, after I sent the body over, I immediately went to the 4 hospitals to collect their bedsheet fragments. The 2 pieces on the left are from public hospitals, and the 2 on the right are from private hospitals. Take a closer look. Wen Xiaolan handed Chen Ling a magnifying glass. Chen Ling took the magnifying glass and squinted his eyes to carefully examine the fragments. A hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. Indeed. The suppliers behind private hospitals come from the textile factories under the Constellation Commerce Association. Their business accounts for 70% of the market in Aurora City. With a large production line and more mature technology. Public hospitals, on the other hand, have slightly older technology. Of course, if you don't look closely, you can't tell the difference. Then how did you pinpoint Frostleaf Hospital among the two private hospitals? Wen Xiaolin didn't speak, he just quietly turned over the last piece of fabric. In the corner of this fabric, the name of that hospital was embroidered. Because all the bed sheets from the other hospital had their name printed on them. But the one on the body didn't. Chen Ling's gaze towards Wen Xiaolin was somewhat subtle. He finally understood why Wen Xiaolin was able to unearth so much dirt in a few years. And even discover the Enforcer's top secret, Hand of Salvation, plan. This terrifying executive ability and observational skills were not something everyone possessed. Even though Chen Ling himself had the secret eye, he never thought of comparing fabrics from other hospitals. What do we do next? Chen Ling asked. Knowing which hospital the problem is in makes things much easier. Wen Xiaolin calmly replied, judging from the time of death of the body. The surgery should have taken place yesterday afternoon. As long as we screen the usage records of Frostleaf Hospital's operating rooms yesterday afternoon, we can basically pinpoint the target. If that hospital really has a problem, will they allow us to investigate the operating rooms? Wen Xiaolin turned to look at Chen Ling and smiled slightly. Allow? No, we don't need any permission to do things. Don't forget, we have freedom of the press. ... Constellation Commerce Association. How is it? Have you found Lu Chen? Yan Qishou saw someone rushing back from outside and immediately put down his teacup. Asking with a frown. The person stammered for a long time, hesitant to speak. Speak. Yan Qishou's voice was a little angry. We went to the crematorium and found Lu Chen in their car. As well as a body that had been kicked to death. It seemed to be a subordinate Lu Chen took out last night. But Lu Chen himself and the other two subordinates were not found. The person paused for a moment, then added. Besides that, we also found traces of a fight at the entrance of the crematorium. If nothing unexpected, they should have been abducted. What? Yan Qishou suddenly sat up from his seat. What about the body? Is it burned? I don't know. It wasn't found at the scene either. Yan Qishou was furious. You can't even handle a body properly. And they were abducted? Have you found out who did it? The person nervously lowered his head. Silent. A bunch of good-for-nothings. Yan Qishou was clearly anxious. He paced frantically in the room, sweat beginning to seep from his forehead. Damn it, I shouldn't have agreed to that old guy from the Silver Moon Merchant Guild. Father said before he left that if the 7 districts route was cut off, we should stop for a while and not bring in new goods. If it weren't for that old guy kneeling and begging me, how could I have taken this risk? Now it's good, the body and people have been captured, and we can't even find out who did it. If these things are exposed, when Father comes back, we'll all be finished. Young master, there's one more thing. More? Speak. Just now, Frostleaf Hospital called and said that 2 reporters suddenly rushed in and started investigating all the operating rooms used yesterday. They might be here for this. What? Yan Qishou's heart sank. Which 2 reporters? It's that Wen Xiaolin, and another one who seems to be his new assistant. Named Lin Yan. It's him again. The person and body were lost last night, and today someone is investigating the hospital. He wouldn't believe that there was no connection between the two, even if he were beaten to death. This Wen Xiaolin, he's been against us before, and now he dares to investigate this matter. He's really asking for death. Yan Qishou was so angry that his teeth itched, and a hint of killing intent spread wildly in his eyes. At the same time, the subordinate who came to report sighed. In recent years, we haven't sent people to deal with him, but his anti-reconnaissance awareness is too strong, as difficult to catch as a fish. You? What else can you do? You can't catch Jian Chongsheng, and you can't kill Wen Xiaolin. How did our Yan family raise such a bunch of good-for-nothings? Yan Qishou looked at the mess in front of him, feeling extremely annoyed. When his father, President Yan, went on this long trip, he entrusted the entire Commerce Association to him to manage, originally wanting to test his abilities. But now, Xianxia has escaped from prison. And so many people have been dispatched with no results so far. He risked getting a heart for the Silver Moon Merchant Guild, but it was intercepted and almost exposed. The troubles the Constellation Commerce Association has encountered in the past few years are not as many as those encountered in these few days. Xianxia paced back and forth in the room for a long time, a ruthless look flashing in his eyes. He looked up at the silent butler beside him. Uncle Long, how many of those strangers father hired from other realms are still in the Commerce Association? The butler's eyes narrowed slightly. What, you're going to use them? The situation is a mess now. We can't rely on these ordinary people. And the enforcement officer can't possibly kill people for us. The only divine power wielders our Commerce Association can secretly use are them. The butler fell silent. He had heard everything just now. To be honest, this situation was indeed very tricky. Especially with the reporters. If they didn't act quickly and let the organ trafficking matter be exposed, it would be troublesome. When the president left, he took 2 with him. There are only 3 left in the Commerce Association now. But to deal with Wen Xiaolan, an ordinary person, and Xianxia, a first-order Shura, 1 is enough. The butler dipped his finger in tea and lightly wrote 3 characters on the table. Li, O, Shu. Which of these 3 do you want to use? Yan Qishu's eyes narrowed slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he tapped the character, O, with his fingertip. Him. Chapter 196, Gathering Evidence. Frostleaf Hospital. Excuse me, we are working now, please leave immediately, and our staff list and surgery schedule are confidential. You can't, hey, you can't go there. Security, where's the security? Amidst the doctor's attempts to stop him, Wen Xiaolan simply bent down and weaved through the crowd, as if he couldn't hear their words, and walked directly towards the rooms in the distance. The surrounding doctors and nurses were stunned. In all their years of work, they had never seen anyone forcibly enter an operating room. Several of them immediately changed their expressions and were about to step forward to stop him when security guards rushed over from a distance. Quick, stop them, a doctor shouted, pointing at Wen Xiaolan. Seeing this, the security guards were about to move when a figure in a brown overcoat reached out to block their path. Excuse me, everyone, Chen Ling pulled out his press pass and said with a smile. We are just here to investigate some matters. Once we find the results, we will naturally leave, please cooperate. Seeing Chen Ling's identification, the security guards' expressions turned a bit ugly. They, of course, knew what kind of authority that item represented. And for a moment, they dared not step forward to stop him. What is there to investigate in a hospital? That's for all of you to answer. A faint glint flashed in the depths of Chen Ling's eyes as he slowly scanned the crowd. Someone among you should know what we're here to investigate, don't you? As soon as this sentence was uttered, several faces in the crowd showed panic, which were all captured by Chen Ling's secret eye. The others looked bewildered, seemingly not understanding what Chen Ling was saying at all. Chen Ling noted down those faces one by one, as well as the name tags on their chests. Just then, a line of small characters floated up on the opposite tile. Audience expectation value plus 7 inches, current expectation value, 39%. Chen Ling's eyes instantly narrowed. Several days had passed since he entered Aurora City, and during this time, there had been almost no significant increase in expectation value. Even occasional small increases could only barely offset the natural decline, preventing him from being usurped by the audience. The biggest increase in expectation value was when he fought Xianxia last night. But it still didn't exceed 5. Now, a sudden, inexplicable 7 points of audience expectation value appeared, making Chen Ling's heart instantly tense. An inexplicable rise in expectation value never boded well. This was a bloody lesson Chen Ling had learned. Chen Ling's brows immediately furrowed. He slowly scanned his surroundings, but found no source of danger. He simply turned around and walked towards Wen Xiaolan, who was searching for the list in the room. How's it going? Chen Ling asked in a low voice. I found a few lists. But there were many surgeries yesterday afternoon, so we need to narrow down the scope further. Wen Xiaolan held a few lists, seemingly deep in thought. What about your end? I just probed them a bit, and a few people reacted strangely. Who? Chen Ling recited the names he had just noted down. Wen Xiaolan scanned the list. His eyes slightly narrowed, as if he was pondering something. After a while, he chuckled softly. I was wondering why something felt missing. So that's it. Wen Xiaolin put away the list and glanced at the people who had rushed over. Due to their fear of the press pass, the security guards dared not use force against them and could only stand outside helplessly. As for the few doctors Chen Ling had named, their expressions visibly relaxed after seeing that Wen Xiaolin had only taken a list and found nothing else. Gentlemen, your presence here will affect our ability to treat patients. For the sake of hospital order and respect for life, please leave. The leading doctor, seeing that conventional methods couldn't drive the two away, resorted to moral arguments, attempting to pressure them into leaving. Yes, if this continues, the patients will start making a fuss. There are still several patients waiting for their surgeries. Lives are at stake. Quote. Everyone spoke one after another, and soon it became a noisy mess. Wen Xiaolin sighed deeply at this. Lin Yan, let's go. Leaving already? It's about done. Let's go. Wen Xiaolin gave Chen Ling a look. Chen Ling understood immediately and nodded. Okay. The two of them, under the watchful eyes of everyone, walked straight out of the hospital, their figures disappearing at the end of the street. Seeing that these two troublesome individuals had been sent away, everyone whispered a few words and then returned to their posts. Several doctors among them exchanged glances in secret, visibly relieved. At the same time, outside the hospital, Chen Ling looked at the gradually receding hospital gate, his expression somewhat subtle. He finally understood why Wen Xiaolin managed to offend so many people and was disliked everywhere he went. With this search method, it would be strange if people didn't resent him. Chen Ling was even afraid that next time Wen Xiaolin got beaten up and went to the hospital, these doctors would refuse to treat him. But on second thought, Wen Xiaolin probably couldn't afford such an expensive private hospital anyway, so it wasn't a big problem. You already know who it is? Chen Ling asked. Xin Yukon, Chu Dong, Wang Yuning. Indeed. Chen Ling nodded, not surprised by this result. Two of these three people were the doctors who had shown unusual expressions earlier. However, Chen Ling didn't know how Wen Xiaolin had deduced the last person. Actually, we all fell into a misconception at first, thinking that as long as we found the surgery records from yesterday afternoon, we could pinpoint the individuals. But if you think about it carefully, it's impossible for such a confidential surgery to leave any paper records. Even the patients on the operating table are likely not truly patients with medical conditions. Wen Xiaolin slowly began. Since that's the case, let's discard all irrelevant information and think about the problem from another angle. If they successfully completed the surgery, the organs could be quietly taken out in containers. But what about the body on the operating table? Even if a normal surgery fails, the body on the operating table won't be discarded casually. It's impossible for them to send the body out from the first floor under everyone's eyes immediately. According to protocol, that body would definitely be sent to a unified place, awaiting family identification. You mean, the morgue? Chen Ling pondered. But a body with its internal organs removed and not officially registered cannot be reasonably and legally sent to the morgue. So, the person in charge of the morgue yesterday must have been one of them? Wen Xiaolin looked at Chen Ling approvingly. Exactly, and that person is Wang Yuning. Chapter 197, Nightmare Strikes. No wonder. Chen Ling remembered that when the thugs discovered them moving the bodies last night, it was already dark. They must have waited until there were fewer people at the hospital's back entrance. Then followed the family claim procedure from the morgue to transport the bodies out. As for the other two, they are both top surgeons at their hospital. I checked their surgical records for the past week, and each of them usually has several surgeries a day. But specifically yesterday afternoon, neither of them performed any surgeries, and even some scheduled surgeries were cancelled. Combined with what you said about their reactions, I'm 90% sure. Chen Ling nodded. If that's the case, shouldn't we find an opportunity to interrogate them individually? At this, Wen Xiaolin's expression became a bit strange. He looked at Chen Ling, his gaze flickering, seemingly wanting to say something but feeling awkward. What's wrong? Lin Yan, I remember you're quite skilled? I'm alright. Then can you tie up all three of them? Quote. Chen Ling looked at Wen Xiaolin in astonishment, finding it hard to believe such bandit-like words came from him. It's like this. Let me explain, Wen Xiaolin said seriously. It can now be confirmed that Frostleaf Hospital is involved in organ trafficking. Right? We just barged into the hospital so openly to look for clues. So the forces behind the hospital must have received the news. I'm not afraid of them coming after me. But I'm afraid that in their desperation, they might, those doctors? You're afraid they'll kill them to silence them if the truth comes out? Chen Ling understood Wen Xiaolan's meaning. And judging by the style of Constellation Commerce Association, they certainly seemed capable of such a thing. Yes, I've encountered this situation many times before. I'd just find a witness. And before I could even formally interview them, they'd be killed, causing the clues to go cold. Wen Xiaolan sighed. I also thought about tying them all up before. But I don't seem to be able to knock them out. Chen Ling. Alright, Chen Ling agreed without much hesitation. Even if Wen Xiaolan hadn't said anything, Chen Ling had planned to interview, these doctors. But since Wen Xiaolan's idea was similar to his own, there was no need to do it covertly. Seeing Chen Ling agree, Wen Xiaolan was immediately overjoyed. Then where should I wait for you? My place? Chen Ling was about to say something when he suddenly remembered the audience expectation value that had flashed by. And Wen Xiaolan's mention that the mastermind behind the hospital might silence witnesses. His eyes narrowed slightly. Could it be that the warning from the expectation value came from the mastermind behind the hospital? Otherwise, why would it only appear after they entered the hospital? No, I'll pick the place. You shouldn't go back tonight either, Chen Ling said. Wen Xiaolan naturally had no objection. For him, living anywhere was the same. No problem. Ellipsis. A drop of blood streaked across the sky, quickly transforming into a human figure on an uninhabited rooftop. Jian Chongsheng rubbed his tired eyes. 2 large dark circles clearly visible. To get something out of Lu Chen, he had stayed up all night. Since Chen Ling could so easily get the information he wanted, why couldn't he? So, after Chen Ling left, Jian Chongsheng gritted his teeth and continued to torture Lu Chen. Besides unilaterally beating him, he used knives, whips, and everything else, working until dawn. Strangely enough, after Chen Ling left, Lu Chen didn't seem so stubborn anymore. After some torment, he still provided the information he knew. It was largely as Jian Chongsheng had guessed. The bad news was that the Yan family had sent out most of their manpower to catch him this time. The good news was that those few outsiders seemed to have made no moves. Jian Chongsheng, now possessing the dripping blood top, wasn't afraid of ordinary people tracking him. But those few outsiders, as the top combat forces the Constellation Commerce Association could openly deploy, were not easy to deal with. As Jian Chongsheng thought, he continued to travel using the dripping blood top. His figure swiftly weaved through the rooftops of Aurora City. At the same time, a faint black shadow flashed across the sky. Jian Chongsheng felt something flash past and looked up at the sky in confusion. His eyes narrowing slightly. Is that an eagle? In the distant sky, a black shadow flapped its wings, soaring across the heavens at an astonishing speed. Under the strong sunlight, only a silhouette resembling an eagle could be seen. Jian Chongsheng paid no attention and continued to approach a nearby hill. At the foot of the hill, he found the grove where he had previously stayed, and that solitary dog kennel. Jian Chongsheng crawled into the dog kennel, groped in a corner for a moment, and pulled out an unopened loaf of bread. The food his uncle had given him in a trash bag last time was almost gone. But Jian Chongsheng didn't care. For him now, sneaking into any general store to swipe some food was not difficult. If possible, he specifically chose the general stores under the Constellation Commerce Association. Jian Chongsheng lay on the ground, munching on bread and looking at the swaying trees outside the dog kennel. His mood quite good, although the dog kennel was cramped. At this critical juncture, it indeed gave him a great sense of security. After finishing his meal, Jian Chongsheng slowly closed his eyes, preparing to rest for a while. As his consciousness sank into sleep, everything around him seemed to blur. He had a dream. He dreamed that he moved into a paper house. Just like the paper houses burned for the dead seen in funeral parlors, cramped and tiny. Even more uncomfortable than a dog kennel. He lay on a hard bed, looking out the window. Outside was a hazy white, as if someone had pasted a layer of white cloth over the window. Behind the cloth, blurred shadows swayed and flashed, as if someone was lingering outside the house. Searching for something, Jian Chongsheng held his breath, staring intently at the white window. He didn't know when, but the lingering shadows disappeared. After a brief, deathly silence, A thin face slowly appeared on the surface of the white window. Like a face with no thickness, pressed flat against the window. It was a vibrant face, with black-purple eyeshadow occupying a third of it, 2 spots of blush like the big red cheeks of a New Year's print doll, and a delicate, apricot-colored small mouth, even smaller than Xianxia's thumb. This face was quietly pressed against the white window. Its unfocused pupils suddenly rotated, dropping to the very bottom of the eye sockets, looking down at Xianxia lying on the bed. This scene was like a thunderclap, exploding in Xianxia's mind. He cried out, jolting upright from his sleep, nearly hitting his head on the top of the dog kennel, his back already soaked with sweat. The blood-like setting sun cast its light from the other side of the hill, dyeing the world an eerie red. Between the dim, dense trees, an enchanting, thin paper figure stood beneath a tree, its unfocused pupils staring intently in the direction of the dog kennel. Suddenly, that apricot-colored small mouth gradually split open, almost dividing the entire face in half. A bizarre sound, like metal grating, slowly emerged. Found 1. Chapter 198, The Paperman. The moment he heard that sound, Xianxia felt his scalp tingle. Just as night was about to fall, a paperman suddenly appeared in the deserted forest and could even speak. If Xianxia hadn't experienced so many things and had a firm mind, he would probably have been scared to death by now. He rushed out of the dog kennel without hesitation, turned around, and ran wildly in the direction away from the paperman. At the same time, the short sword in his palm sliced open, and scarlet blood immediately appeared. He waved his blood-soaked hand, and a few drops of blood shot out at high speed. The next moment, his figure disappeared from where he stood. Xianxia was not foolish. That paperman could not be a natural product, someone must be controlling it. And whoever could do that was undoubtedly an owner of a divine path, and definitely not the soldier god path. In Aurora City, for another divine path owner to suddenly appear, and seemingly to come for him, the identity of the other party was already obvious. Those outsiders hired by the Constellation Commerce Association? But didn't Lu Chen say they weren't deployed? Xianxia cursed Lu Chen to hell in his heart, only regretting that he had been too quick to kill him just now. Now that he thought about it, it was probably that strange bird he encountered on his way back that was the problem. Otherwise, he hadn't met anyone on his journey. So how did the other party track him all the way here? Xianxia used the dripping blood top twice in succession, and in just a few seconds, he had already fled hundreds of meters. The original paperman was no longer visible, but he still didn't stop moving. Xianxia knew very well how terrifying those outsiders from the Constellation Commerce Association were. Trying to shake them off with this level of effort was nothing short of wishful thinking. As if to confirm Xianxia's thoughts, the next moment, he felt a weight on his shoulder, as if something had hung onto his back. Xianxia's pupils slightly contracted. He subconsciously turned his head to look. At some unknown point, that vivid paperman's face was prostrate on his back, staring at him with hollow and eerie eyes. The moment their eyes met, Xianxia's heart seemed to skip a beat. He didn't know how this paperman had instantly caught up to him after he had fled such a distance, and he had no time to think about it. The paperman lightly raised its hand and patted his shoulder. A muffled thud, like a low rumble of thunder, emanated from Xianxia's body, and half of his body instantly lost sensation. Xianxia didn't even feel any pain. His body lost balance and he fell heavily to the ground. The paperman prostrate on his back also drifted lightly like a kite the moment he fell, hanging upside down from the tip of a nearby tree branch. Its slight weight only bent the branch a little. "Who are you?" Xianxia struggled to his feet, his eyes bloodshot. Feeling Xianxia's severely injured state, the blood clothes began to operate wildly, an endless stream of power flowing through his body, and killing intent spread madly through the deserted forest. The paperman had no intention of speaking. It just hung silently from the tree branch, swaying slightly with the cold wind, like a New Year's painting that had been left behind. Xianxia gritted his teeth and stomped hard on the ground, his body shooting out like a cannonball towards the paperman. Since he couldn't escape even by using the dripping blood top, he had no choice but to fight head-on. Xianxia held his short sword, and a cold glint swept towards the paperman with astonishing speed. Just as the sword's edge was about to touch the opponent, The paperman trembled slightly and instantly disappeared from Xianxia's sight. No, it couldn't be considered disappearing at all. Xianxia personally saw the opponent being unfolded, as if it was disassembled into several creased paper sheets out of thin air, then transformed into long, slender snakes that instantly wrapped around his arm, which was wielding the short sword. Xianxia was stunned. He had never anticipated such a possibility. The scene before him completely exceeded his understanding of combat. Wen had the soldier god path, which always fought straightforwardly, ever fought such a bizarre battle? Except when facing Qianling. Xianxia subconsciously wanted to swing his sword to cut off the paper strips wrapped around him. But several of them instantly intertwined into chain-like objects, completely binding his hands and feet. Another paper strip directly wrapped around his neck, hoisting him onto a tree branch. Xianxia struggled violently. The strength that could tear steel bars was now unable to break free from these paper strips. His neck was deeply marked, and a strong sense of suffocation surged into his heart. It was then that he saw a hunched figure slowly walking through the dim, dense forest. It was a thin, pale man, with a hunched back like a hunchback and a limping gait, looking like a malnourished refugee. At this moment, he was playing with a sticky note in his hand, skillfully folding and flipping it, sometimes turning it into a human figure, sometimes folding it into a paper crane, and sometimes stacking it into a flower. His drooping eyes slightly lifted, and he glanced at Xianxia, who was hanging from the tree, his eyes devoid of any emotional fluctuation. This one, take him alive. As his voice fell, the paper strip wrapped around Xianxia's neck naturally loosened. He fell from midair, crashing heavily to the ground. Xianxia's purple face gasped violently. He stared intently at the pale man beside him, wanting to get up and continue fighting him, but he couldn't break free from the paper snakes binding his hands and feet. The pale man paid him no mind. As the sticky note he was playing with unfolded, sheets of paper grew out of the soil beneath his feet, wrapping and coiling around Xianxia as if alive, like a white coffin, gradually sealing him within. Seeing this scene, Xianxia seemed to realize something, and fear flashed in his eyes. Domain, you're a fourth rank? As the pale man folded the sticky note at his fingertips into a small cuboid, Xianxia's body completely disappeared, leaving only a white paper man lying alone on the ground, trembling constantly. The pale man slowly squatted down, took out a red pen from his pocket, and drew a pair of red eyes on the paper man. The paper man immediately became motionless, completely silent. Silence fell over the forest. The pale man reached out and carried the light paper man on his hunchbacked back. In the silent and dark dense forest, he walked silently in another direction, like an undertaker about to attend a funeral. 2 more left. This time, no live captives, he muttered to himself. Chapter 199, Sanction. The moon was dark and the wind howled. Wen Xiaolin paced anxiously inside a secluded factory building. The empty factory building held only him. There were few residents nearby, and only a few scattered lights twinkled in the distance. Everything was silent, yet Wen Xiaolin's heart couldn't find peace. Why isn't Lin Yan back yet? Did something go wrong with the kidnapping? Was he too gentle when he acted, and got discovered? Or was he seen dragging 3 people back, and reported to the enforcers? Lin Yan is probably doing this for the first time. Without much experience, there's a high chance of problems. Sigh, it's my fault for making him kidnap people. Isn't this making him break the law? No, this started with me. I have to get him out. Wen Xiaolin agonized for a long time, a look of determination flashing in his eyes. He immediately strode towards the factory door. Just then, a figure dragging 3 sacks slowly approached from the distance. Mr. Wen, where are you going? Chen Ling raised an eyebrow in surprise, seeing Wen Xiaolin rush out. Wen Xiaolin froze, seeing him return safe and sound. I was worried something might have gone wrong with the kidnapping, so I wanted to check. Wen Xiaolin's gaze fell on the 3 sacks. You succeeded? What could go wrong with kidnapping someone? Chen Ling waved his hand casually, opening all the sacks. Inside lay 3 unconscious figures, their mouths gagged with cloth strips and their hands and feet tightly bound. They were Xin Yukon, Chu Dong, and Wang Yuning. Wen Xiaolin's eyes lit up. He hadn't expected Chen Ling to actually succeed in capturing the 3, and to have avoided detection, successfully transporting them here. How did you do it? Wen Xiaolin couldn't help but ask. Chen Ling spoke casually. I just hid along their way home from work. Knocked them out one by one when no one was around. Then borrowed a cargo van and came over. Don't worry, no one found out along the way. For Chen Ling, kidnapping 3 ordinary people naturally posed no difficulty. In fact, he could have done it even more simply and directly. But considering he couldn't arouse Wen Xiaolin's suspicion, he tried to be as discreet as possible. Wen Xiaolin nodded. You worked hard. As he spoke, the 2 of them carried the people from the sacks into the factory building. Wen Xiaolin looked at the 3 lined up on the floor, showing no signs of waking up despite being so manhandled. He turned to Chen Ling and asked, Did you hit them very hard? Why aren't they waking up? I don't know. This is my first time hitting people, so I couldn't gauge the force. Chen Ling shook his head blankly. Oh, alright. How about we pour a basin of water on them to wake them all up? Let's not. We're not kidnappers. We kidnapped them just to ensure their safety. Wen Xiaolin glanced at the sleeping figures. Anyway, we have time. We'll just wait for them to wake up slowly. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't say much. Just then, Wen Xiaolin seemed to remember something and quickly walked out of the factory building. What's wrong? I need to go back. The camera is still at home. Without the camera, I can't take photos of the 3 of them, and I'll lack evidence for the interview. Chen Ling looked at the sky outside, his brows furrowing slightly. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. Give me the key, I'll go get it. Wen Xiaolin was about to say something, but Chen Ling spoke first. They should be waking up soon. If I stay here, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist hitting them. Why? They personally hollowed out a child last night, just like they hollowed out my younger brother back then. Wen Xiaolin froze, and the factory building suddenly fell silent. Chen Ling took the key from his hand and walked out of the factory building alone, his figure gradually disappearing into the darkness. Watching Chen Ling's retreating back, Wen Xiaolin's expression immediately became complicated. He turned to look at the 3 unconscious figures on the factory floor, lost in thought. A few minutes later, splash! A basin of cold water was poured over the 3, almost freezing them into popsicles in the cold night. They jolted awake from their unconsciousness, seeing the surrounding factory building and Wen Xiaolin standing silently before them, holding an empty bucket. Their eyes were filled with shock and bewilderment. It's you? You kidnapped us? What do you want? Damn it, this is illegal. Amidst the 3's terrified shouts and curses, Wen Xiaolin casually tossed the empty bucket aside, producing a dull thud. He raised his hand and forcefully loosened his professional tie at the collar of his shirt, his cold gaze indifferently sweeping over the 3. Next, I will conduct an in-depth interview with you all. The content of this interview will determine your fate. If you cooperate, the public and the law will sanction you. If you don't cooperate, I will sanction you on behalf of that child. Understand? Ellipsis. Under the moonlight, Chen Ling, wearing a brown overcoat, walked into a low-rise residential building. Chen Ling was no stranger to Wen Xiaolin's home. He had delivered a corpse there just this morning. This place was undoubtedly much better than the residences in the 3rd district. But compared to other parts of Aurora City, it was cramped and crowded like a slum. The reason Chen Ling didn't want Wen Xiaolin to return alone was that he was worried the people behind the hospital would find out they were investigating something they shouldn't be, and send people to ambush them. Chen Ling himself wasn't afraid. Anyone who came would just be sending themselves to their doom. But if Wen Xiaolin were injured, the investigation progress would slow down. Fortunately, looking at the situation around this residential building, there was nothing unusual for the time being. At this moment, the residents here should already be sound asleep, and the entire hallway was incredibly quiet. Chen Ling walked up to the 4th floor and found that there weren't many residents on this floor. Most of the rooms were still in a raw state, or showed signs of having been uninhabited for a long time. Chen Ling went straight to the innermost door, quietly opened it, and walked inside. Messier than I expected. Chen Ling's gaze swept over the slightly cluttered room. The walls were covered with clipped news articles, unpublished paragraphs, and secretly taken photos from unknown sources. At first glance, it looked exactly like a secret agent's room Chen Ling had seen in movies in his previous life. However, this did fit the image of Wen Xiaolin, an older single male youth. Aside from news, he seemed to have no other interests in his life. Chen Ling quickly found the camera in the room, closed the door, and left. Just as he reached the corner of the hallway, light footsteps came from the stairs on the floor below. Tap, tap, tap. Audience expectation +5. The footsteps were steady and light, slowly ascending from the 3rd floor to the 4th. Hearing this sound, Chen Ling was slightly startled. Then several thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning. He quickly raised his hand to his chin. By the time he rounded the corner and entered the hallway, he had transformed into a middle-aged man of about 30, carrying a briefcase in one hand, stepping down the stairs from the 4th floor. By the moonlight in the hallway, Chen Ling finally saw the ascending figure, a pale, hunchbacked man, like a hunchback, walking with his head bowed, seemingly listless. And on his back, a strange paper figure with glowing red eyes lay quietly, motionless. Chapter 200, A Close Call? Seeing this, Chen Ling's heart trembled slightly. When he heard footsteps, he felt something was off. This residential building only had 4 floors, and most of the rooms on the 4th floor were uninhabited. At this hour, who would be going up to the 4th floor? Coupled with the special circumstances of the day, Chen Ling's vigilance was already extremely high, so he almost didn't hesitate to change his face at the corner just in case. He didn't expect to actually run into something eerie. Who would be carrying such a large paper figure late at night? And to say they were taking a paper figure home, that would be even more bizarre. Moreover, for some reason, the moment Chen Ling's gaze met the paper figure's red eyes, he felt his hair stand on end. His intuition told him that the person in front of him was definitely not simple. Noticing someone coming downstairs, the hunched figure slowly raised his head. His droopy eyes swept over Chen Ling, and seeing a strange middle-aged man, he listlessly lowered his head again and continued climbing the stairs. In the dead silent and narrow stairwell, 2 figures passed each other. As he passed the paper figure, Chen Ling even felt a faint chill wash over him, a coldness that stung his bones. Fortunately, the figure carrying the paper figure seemed uninterested in him. He walked straight to the 4th floor, turned a corner, and headed towards the end of the corridor. Seeing this, Chen Ling knew something was wrong. After reaching the 1st floor, he decisively chose to leave, unwilling to stay for another second. Only after he had walked a little further did he slightly turn his head to look behind him. In the residential building not far away, a figure walked out of the room at the end of the 4th floor. Due to the distance, Chen Ling couldn't make out his expression. But the room he came out of was precisely Wen Xiaolan's room, which Chen Ling had just locked from the outside. Oh no! Chen Ling's heart immediately sank. The person carrying the paper figure was definitely not an ordinary person. Most likely an owner of a certain divine path. And judging by the other party's trajectory, he was clearly targeting Wen Xiaolan. If Wen Xiaolan had returned home to rest today, he would probably be a corpse by now. Chen Ling tried to make his steps appear unhurried and normal. Just then, a thought suddenly flashed through Chen Ling's mind. Wait. Where was the paper figure that person was carrying? Chen Ling clearly remembered that the person was still carrying the paper figure when he went upstairs. But when he pushed open the door and came out of the room just now, the paper figure seemed to be gone? The moment this thought arose, Chen Ling felt a slight weight on his shoulder, as if something had hooked onto his back. A chill shot from his feet straight to Chen Ling's brain. He unhesitatingly pulled out his short knife and stabbed it behind him. Clang! The blade of the short knife firmly pressed against the paper figure's fangs, which were about to bite down, emitting a metallic clang. At the same time, a pair of hollow red eyes stared at Chen Ling, and 2 bright red blushes, like apples, were almost pressed against the back of Chen Ling's head. This scene made Chen Ling's pupils contract. He didn't know when this paper figure had followed him, nor did he know how it suddenly came to life. But there was no doubt that he had finally been targeted. The seemingly thin paper figure's fangs gradually exerted force, and the metal blade began to visibly bend and deform. As an irresistible force came from his hand, Chen Ling subconsciously let go of the hilt. The next moment, the short knife shattered in the paper figure's mouth. The sharp fragments were chewed vigorously like candy, and within a few seconds, they were completely reduced to scrap metal. Open black lens bracket. Audience anticipation +3 close black lens bracket. What the hell is this thing? Chen Ling had never seen such a bizarre sight. He quickly moved backward to create distance from the paper figure, but the other party floated after him as if weightless. I almost let you slip away. The paper figure's mouth split open, and a strange, sharp voice emerged from it. The paper figure raised its thin fist and weakly swung it at Chen Ling. Seeing that there was no avoiding it, Chen Ling forcefully pushed off the ground with his back foot, instantly channeling all his strength into his right hand, and met the punch with his own. Bang! The paper fist and flesh fist collided with a loud bang. Chen Ling only felt his fist effortlessly crush the paper fist, as if there was no resistance at all. Before he could react, his right fist, which he had just swung out, suddenly lost control and abruptly changed direction, smashing heavily into his own chest. Chen Ling violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and several ribs fractured on the spot. In that instant, it felt as if his fist was no longer his own. Chen Ling barely managed to steady himself and did not rashly attack again. Instead, he frowned, looking at the strange paper figure in front of him, his mind racing. The strength of that punch doesn't seem like an ordinary person's, the paper figure said slowly, its hollow eyes fixed on Chen Ling. But according to the intel, Wen Xiaolan and Lin Yan are both ordinary people. So who are you? Hearing this, Chen Ling's judgment was confirmed. This person in front of him was targeting him and Wen Xiaolan. That's what I should be asking you, Chen Ling said coldly. The paper figure seemed to have given up on questioning and floated towards Chen Ling again. When he went upstairs earlier, he didn't pay attention, but when the hunched man reached the 4th floor and realized there were only 1 or 2 households on that floor, he immediately realized that Chen Ling, who was coming downstairs at this hour, was suspicious. Moreover, Wen Xiaolan's home was empty, so naturally, he would suspect Chen Ling was involved. However, no matter who Chen Ling was or what he did to Wen Xiaolan, everything would become clear once he was captured and brought back for a soul fragmentation search evidence. Chen Ling had witnessed the strangeness of this paper figure and naturally wouldn't engage it head-on again. His figure swiftly darted into the distance. His speed maximized despite his injured state. But even so, he couldn't outrun the paper figure, which could even catch up to the dripping blood top. Seeing this, Chen Ling's mind raced. He abandoned the idea of escaping to an open area and instead plunged into the adjacent residential building. This residential building had even fewer residents than the one Wen Xiaolan lived in next door. Most of them were abandoned empty rooms. Chen Ling gracefully flipped into the 2nd floor through a broken window, then tore at his chin again with his fingertips, his figure instantly vanishing from the spot. Half a second later, the paper figure floated lightly through the window, tracking him. Its hollow red eyes swept across the room. Seeing no one there, it silently entered other rooms, searching them one by one. But after searching a circle and finding no one, the paper figure seemed a little surprised. It stood blankly in the center of the room, its neck beginning to rotate 360 degrees, scanning its surroundings. Just then, a voice suddenly rang out from above its head. For the justice of human civilization, I sentence you to death.